Pastor Joel Brooks Jr. How you doing?
Doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Um, I was reflecting back on our first conversation,
hmm
um, and that was episode 36.
Okay. Wow.
And this is episode 201.
Wow. That's great. How often are you on? Once a week?
Well, I've done, yeah, it's been sometimes two times, sometimes three
Okay.
times, sometimes one
hmm
time. For the first, I don't know, probably for the first almost 50 episodes, I was doing about what four four a week, 4 or 5 a week, and I knew I was going to have to slow down from that. But
Right, right, right. Not
but
sustainable.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's and since then, since episode 36, you agreed to be part of a couple panels.
Right.
Actually, three separate panels uh, on large platforms within what's known as the Black Manosphere. Um, uh, a couple of them were on O'Shea Duke Jackson's channel,
Right.
and then one of them was on Bernard Riley's channel.
Okay. Mhm.
And I thought those were impactful, important conversations, maybe conversations that we don't have nearly as much as I think we should be having them.
Right. Right.
But I appreciate your willingness to put up with us, and
No,
I
no
thought you,
problem, man. Excuse me.
yeah, and I thought that you, your perspective, and you have a unique story, and if we could talk a little bit about that again,
Okay.
and that is you inherited a church that had a pretty usual demographic for a black church,
Mhm.
but you you had some other thoughts about what the demographic of a church ought to be. Can you talk a
Okay.
little bit about that?
Yeah, I thought the demographics of the church should reflect the community.
Right.
Um, you know, when you look at God's values, He's praying that we be one. The Bible says in Galatians that in Christ there's neither male, female, Jew, Greek, rich or poor. Okay. So, in other words, for me, and that was probably in some ways a real oversimplification, but for me, it was that it solved the race problem, the kingdom solved the gender issue, and it solved the class issue. And those, to me, are the three major things that we deal with. And so in Christ is neither male, and so it should, I felt the church should reflect the community. So I began to look at barriers to to cross cultural or to multiracial to ministry. And we tried to eliminate those, and at the same time have our own DNA, be true to who we are. So we didn't, I didn't try to become white. You know what I'm saying? I didn't try to become something different than I am. I just we were true to you know, what we felt was organic for us. But at the same time, I tried to get rid of and educate people about some of the things that really prevent people from going to church together. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you inherited a church that was what was the breakdown percentage wise as far as men and women in the church?
Oh, there were a lot more women than men. It's probably about 25 people, and it was dominated in many ways. I mean, the first pastor was a male, but it was dominated by the women in the church, and so we didn't have the husbands, and so I began to make an emphasis on men. As a matter of fact, I did something really bold. I went to an Ed Cole meeting down in Dallas, and he wrote the book Maximize Manhood. And so I really felt like he had some answers to what we were dealing with. And so on the plane ride, I had one of those Kairos moments that you have when you realize, okay, God set this up. This is a God setup. And I was sitting next to a pastor, and he had been at a revival meeting in Dallas. I was in Fort Worth, and we were on our way back to Michigan. He pastored in Saginaw. And he said, can I say something to you without offending you? I told him some of my goals and stuff. And I said, yeah. He said, the churches in my city, the Black Pentecostal churches, the women are so sold out to the pastor that they'll destroy their marriage in the process of serving the church. And I was like, oh my goodness. I said, that was a word, you know. I came home, I made a rule that women could not serve in church unless their husbands were happy with them at home. And, you know, and for most women it worked. There were some women who didn't like that rule, but I said, hey, I want to surround myself with men. I don't think it's healthy that I'm surrounded with women on the board and sharing my heart with them. And so we made a shift, man. And at one point we were actually 50-50. We got all the husbands because they didn't have to compete with me. You know, I said, don't quote me around the house. Don't, Pastor Brooks. I said, quote the Bible, quote Jesus, you know. Don't make your husband feel like, because most husbands are not in the word already. So there's an intimidation factor there. And so I said, you know, don't make it look like he's having to compete with me, you know, and tell him I'm not competing with him. Okay. Tell him I want him at church. Because when you get the man, I believe for the most part, you get the whole family. Okay. And so it was funny because God used something bad. We were in a building where the ceiling was collapsing. And so one of the guys who was into the trades said, Pastor, I believe this ceiling is not stable. He said, can I look at it? And I said, yeah. And what we had was probably a 2-ton ceiling being held together by its own pitch. In other words, you just had two halves like kind of leaning on each other and they weren't connected to anything. So the guys, all the husbands came in, tore the ceiling up, replaced it, and that got them involved with the church. And so from that time on, we started having a lot of men in our church. And so, you know, I purposely don't dress like a pimp. You know what I'm saying? I don't play to women. You know, I want men. I want everybody. And so, so we became a church that became very attractive to men who were not necessarily religious. So.
Yeah. And you know, you were my pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And that was during a very formative time in my life. And one thing I always appreciated was that you weren't flashy.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff that you talked about was practical.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there was a lot of guys in the church. I mean, I made a lot of friends when I was there, and there were, you know, church has a sort of usual dip in a particular age range, and it's like anywhere from like 18 to maybe 30 or so,
right?
35, like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because, you know, and a lot of that is because, you know, if you're going to go to college, you probably don't go to college or in the same town that you grew up in, or, you know, or even if you did, your schedule changes or whatever. So,
right.
And then, you know, then you're getting your career going and you're spending a lot of extra time doing what you need to do to hustle. And, but then, you'll start to see men returning to church because, you know, it's like, okay, well, you know, I'm starting a family. I want my kids to have this sort of value system that, you know, is important to me and all of that. So you kind of see that kind of thing. So that was probably pretty typical. But, you know, there were a lot of men in the church, and a lot of good guys that, you know, seemed like they were all, you know, there for the.
Thank you so much for watching my video so far. If you'd like to support, there are several ways to do so below. Also, likes are free. Please comment, share, and subscribe. Now back to the video.
They're for the right reason, So one thing that happened since the last time we collaborated is probably the most well-known voice from the so-called Black Manosphere, Kevin Samuels,
Right.
passed away. And this would have been, today is, what is it? It's Wednesday. So this would have been 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks
tomorrow.
Ago,
yeah. And that's been the major media outlets are running stories or have been running stories. There's been a lot of, rumors. They're claiming that he died broke or, or all kinds of things, anything to kind of sort of besmirch the guy. There's been a lot of dancing on his grave.
Right. He was, he was controversial.
Very much so. Very much so. He did a special. He didn't usually do Sunday night shows.
Right.
His rhythm on YouTube was Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But then he'd do something on Instagram on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Oh, okay.
So that was his usual live streaming sort of pattern. But he did a show on Sunday, and that show was, I don't remember the exact name, but it was targeted at trying to get men back into black church.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he had 3 points in particular. And I'm going to share these points with you, and I just want to get your thought on what you think of these points.
Okay.
They sound reminiscent to things that I've heard you say.
Okay.
So one of them, he said, is that the pastor has to share power.
Right.
So one of the issues that he said was the case in churches that he attended was that, the pastors were not willing to share power, and men, at least men that are competent, they're not going to stick around if there's nothing for them to do.
Right.
And so that was one thing. Another thing that he said was less prosperity gospel and more sort of family oriented messaging. So one of the issues in our churches, and I know that you don't like to label your church as a black church, but as far as the churches in our communities, a lot of the one of the issues is that it's like there's like a single mother epidemic, right?
Yeah, right.
And we know that the Democrats have, when they talk about politicians in general, but definitely Democrats led the charge with this. When they talk about black family, they're not talking about men. They're not talking about men because the usual structure of a black family, in 80% of the cases or something, 75% of the cases, is that the men are not part of the family structure.
Wow. That's
and
crazy.
Yeah, so if you talk in church, if you talk in black church, if the preacher is really aggressively going after certain behaviors that create a lot of these broken families, then I think that there's fear that there's a fear that the folks that are there in the pews will disappear because they'll feel as though they're being targeted.
Okay.
So, and then the third thing he said was more focus on men's ministry and on singles ministry, where the church actually spends money on, on singles ministry in particular.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, and he actually went as far as to say, almost to set up a sort of courtship kind of context, right? That's not the best word for it, but yeah. Well, everyone's vetted. The women are vetted, the men are vetted, and so that people can come to the church and they can feel within reason, they can feel safe, entertaining the possibility of, getting with somebody that's from the church, right. Not that people are hanging out there trying to catch somebody, right. And then they're going to do what they're going to do. Right. Mm-hmm. So what do you think of that? What do you think of those points?
Those three things. The first one, what was your first one? I remember the second two.
Sharing power. Pastor has to share power. Absolutely.
That's a leadership piece. Your organization will basically grow to the size of your leadership cup. Okay. And so leaders influence people. Okay. Much of pastoring is based on building followers. Okay. People who will buy into what you're already pitching. Okay. And try to motivate people to help you do what you are pitching. When you begin to have a leadership culture in your church, you're interested in others' ideas, others' input, and and you need a different type of person. Now, a leader is different because they demand results. And so I can't just vision cast with leaders. I got to produce. Okay. And so leaders, they bring talent, they bring experience, they bring education, they bring things that they can offer to the table. And it makes the organization much richer when you have input from a wide variety of people, as opposed to one man's sort of vision of what should happen. The pastor is the keeper of the vision, and I take responsibility for that. But much of what has worked for me as a pastor, I tripped over, I didn't plan. Okay, we hit something, and it was like, man, that God was in that, and so it becomes part of what we do and part of our culture. Okay, you can't expect people to give you their best if you don't give them a stake in what's happening. Okay, and so you have to share power to do that. Okay, ultimately I'm responsible for what happens, and so ultimately, in tough cases, I'll make a decision. Okay, but I take into account people's abilities and talents, and it feeds into the direction. One of the things I'll ask the whole congregation is finish this sentence. Okay, what if, or I wish, if that makes sense. Okay, I've been trained by IDEO, the organization IDEO, in innovation techniques. And innovation, when you start doing innovation, is different than the other way of doing things. Pastors typically have a big vision, and they try to execute the vision, and then we'll see if it works or not. Whereas innovation is based on small slice observation. Okay, so you sit in your own church parking lot, and you notice that the mother with the baby carriage and the two little kids is having trouble getting through the door. See what I'm saying? Now, that has an effect on her experience. She may not write that complaint down and give it to me, but it affected her experience, and it made it either, it could have made it, unpleasant time, man. I'm just, Whereas, so when you solve problems, you build prototypes rather than having a vision that you write out. You have a collective group that brainstorms, and you build prototypes. So a lot of what our church has come from brainstorming, having other people at the table with ideas, And the whole idea with innovation is that 1,000 ideas will give you 100 interesting ideas, will give you 10 good ideas, will give you one amazing idea. And that's what you're looking for, is that amazing idea. But it comes from the collective. It comes from people giving their creativity and their excellence. That's, to me, that's where excellence comes from, is all of the creativity from the various people, the various angles. And so you have to share the power. Now, the insecurity is that if you give a guy power to help you, you also give the guy power to hurt you. Okay. And so when you allow someone to share influence in your world, they could influence people away from you. And that's why most guys are rather insecure and protective of their organizations, because they don't want to get hurt. Okay. But there's really, if you're going to grow a large organization, a powerful organization, you got to take that risk. You got to share the power. And so that's where it is. And if you're going to lead by leadership as opposed to personality, okay, you have to have a vision. You have to be able to motivate people, and they have to come for a reason other than you, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. And
well, you had two other points, right?
Yeah. The second point was less prosperity and more sort of family oriented and kind of critical assessment of, culture, society, behavior, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree with the second part of that, as far as making sure people, it's based on relationships. And so how do we relate? How do men relate to women? How do women relate to men? How do men relate to each other? Christians it's a covenant family. Okay. Mm. So it's based on faith. It's based on trust. It's based on unity, is love, covering one another, those kinds of things. It should be a really safe place to be. And so, your family should thrive. If you're being, if you want to, and you're being taught properly. You understand what I'm saying? You want to thrive in your relationships, man. And so now the prosperity thing, I'm not sure I understand that, because whoever rules the economics of a nation or of a society determines the climate, determines the spiritual climate of the country. And so in other words, you can have Christians who pray hard, but rich people control the climate. Okay, and I think COVID really brought that to surface. People were coming against prosperity, but the guys who owned the platforms would determine what was being preached. Okay, and that's dominion. And if you're going to, Christians, we're called to walk in dominion. Okay, and so you can't have dominion if you don't have money, if you don't have a lot of money. And so I can say something about gender or something like that, and I can find myself silenced. Okay, and since churches were closed, that was the marketplace, that was the platform. So you got Facebook, you got YouTube, you got all these things, man, and wealthy, super wealthy guys, Amazon, actually controlled what we did and controlled what happened. And so now we realize, and now a very wealthy guy, Elon Musk, has purchased Twitter. Okay, and everybody's mad at him, but I believe it's been a response to prayer that we want free speech. Okay, Twitter was knocking conservatives. I'm basically conservative. Twitter was knocking conservatives off, and algorithms were setting people up. I think it had an effect on the election. And so if you don't control that stuff, man, if you don't have wealth, you're going to be a servant. And so I think there are people who are called to be rich. I think being, how can I say it, not being in debt, having your own money gives you a level of freedom. Especially for guys who are working, women who are working, because it can compromise you. See, the Bible talks in Revelation 13 about the beast and all this, and it says that people will take a mark in their forehead and in their hand, okay, and that without that you won't be able to buy or sell. Well, we're seeing that happen. If you don't think a certain way, mark in the head. If you don't do things a certain way, mark in the hand, then they cut you out from commerce, okay. And so, they try to, oh man, we're going to cancel you. That's what cancel society is. To me, cancel society is Revelation 13, man. It's you can't buy or sell unless you think this way. Now think about this, man. I have to sneak into England to preach. Okay. I can't go to England and declare in customs I'm here to preach the gospel. They might not let me in. They'll look up my messages on YouTube. They'll look up stuff. And so I have to say, I'm going to an anniversary. I'm going to celebrate this. I'm going to celebrate that. In order to get in the country, man, England, and Canada, they're putting guys in jail for preaching certain things, and so, and so unless you like persecution and you have some kind of romantic issue with being persecuted and being resisted, money's a really big deal. And so go on.
Yeah. So of course I agree with all that. And I think that Kevin would agree with that too.
Okay.
What he is talking about is, this sort of stereotypical stuff,
okay,
that we see in the Black community where the preacher's, he's got 3 Mercedes-Benz cars, the average, the average income of the parishioner is poverty level, where he's constantly pumping them to give more, hey, take out a mortgage on your house.
Oh man.
So to give to the church, hey, I need a private jet, because I can't be inconvenienced by, the airport, all of that kind of stuff. That's more the stuff that he's talking about. It's the sort of more egregious infractions. Yes, you do need money to do anything, to have a particular reach. I thought that was an interesting assessment of the mark in the head, the mark in the head and in the hand,
right,
with the way you think and the way you do things. I actually hadn't heard someone put it that way before, and so yeah, I think cancel culture does fit that.
Yeah, and the thing is that you have to. I think we need to title that thing that we don't like something else. Okay, I think we have to remove the title of the prosperity gospel because it's one of the things he promises. See, Christ has redeemed us in Galatians 3:13 from the curse of the law. Okay, that the blessing of Abraham might come on the Gentiles through faith. Now, there's a little parenthetical statement in the middle of there, which is Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us, for as it is written, curses everyone who hangs on the tree. So you got that parenthetical statement. But if you remove that, it says that Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law, that the blessing of Abraham might come on the Gentiles. Okay?
Right.
Matter of fact, it says in that same chapter, Shawn, that the gospel was preached to Abraham. And this is several hundred years before Jesus ever showed up. See, so if you ask a Christian, what's the gospel? Well, Jesus died for your sins. Okay. Well, that's how you were saved. But the purpose for being saved was that the blessing of Abraham might be on you. Okay. So the blessing, which includes prosperity, includes health, peace of mind, joy, harmony in your family, all those things. The blessing was the purpose of it. You understand what I'm saying? It's like you go to the store and get us some food. How did you go? You went by car. Okay, so then we go and get little cars and put them on necklaces and put them around their neck because that's how you got there. But the purpose was the food. The purpose of going to the store was to get the food. So the purpose is the blessing. Now, when you look at things spiritually, Jesus is the blessing. Okay. God, the presence of God is the blessing. The Spirit of God is the blessing. And so in that sense, you get back to a person. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bible is about prosperity. And so and so we need another name, that pimp thing, that that thing that that preachers do, that just disgust you if you got any kind of sense yourself. Just I'm the man to God. We call it the man to God syndrome.
Yeah.
Where I get called by God, and then one day everything I say is from heaven, and if you dispute it at your own risk, and it's fear-based, and it's not, and it's not healthy, man. Most of the preaching I've done in Africa was to get rid of that king thing, that chief mentality. You know what I'm saying? That for some reason it's irresistible, and people, there's a place for honor. There's a place for giving honor, but then there's a place where it gets out of whack, man. And the whole purpose of what I'm doing is to get you to think for yourself, and to think, not tell you what to think, but tell you how to think, and think for yourself, man. And that whole thing is actually reflected in our commitment to the Democratic Party, man. It's like whatever they say goes, man. And I'm like, are you even thinking about what's healthy for you and what's healthy for your community, man? And I have people that won't even speak to me, man. They won't look at me. They won't speak to me, because to them, I'm against Black people, because I don't support certain ways of thinking. So I really want to find another name, another name for that, man. The slave mentality that people serve with, it's just bad. Yeah. And your third one was?
So financial support for men's ministry and singles ministry.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Your budget is a financial reflection of your vision.
Right.
Okay. So if you don't put any money in it, you don't really care about it. Okay. And so we've done singles. Now, the problem with singles ministry is that most men are not in it. Okay. Most men are not attracted to singles ministry. Okay. We get men to come to men's ministry, and we get a lot of single men in men's ministry. But in our experience, the singles thing turns out to be a big function for women. And a few guys there feel like they're meat in a meat market. It's like, man, because most single people I know want to be married. And so that was the problem we ran into with singles ministry. We would put money in it. We would have speakers in, but it became tough because the numbers were so out of whack. Okay. And then singles is also a really broad term. Okay. So you can have a single that's college age. You can have a single that's young adult.
Oh, right.
22 through 30. You can have a single that's 70. Okay.
Right.
And all the stuff in between. And so some single people didn't feel comfortable talking about stuff, and their mama sitting next to them, and she's single, and you know what I'm saying? So it's a super broad term. And so what I'm looking for is leaders who will lead singles in those various niches, in those various demographics, so that you can get rid of some of the discomfort. So I actually wrote a book to single women. It started out the rules of what was it? What women don't know and men don't tell you. Okay, and it pre-existed Steve Harvey's book. But it was, it's really along the same lines. Only my book is Christian. Michelle McKinney-Hammond, who's written about 30 books, we wrote it together. And it was basically dealing with some of the practical issues about how men think differently than women. And women, I would never say that a woman should think like a man. I just think a woman should know how a man thinks, so that they can not get tripped up in the relationship piece. But yeah, man. So it's a big deal. We wrote a book to it, and it's a really big deal. It needs an investment, but at some point we need to be able to get the demographics out and get men excited about singles ministry.
I think now one of the big issues. Okay, so first of all, there's this sort of okay, so there's something that I don't think is necessarily true.
Okay.
That is generally believed.
Okay.
By men, and that is that the women in church behave the same way that the women in the world do. That it's the same difference. Okay. And you've even heard folks say stuff like, that the, Christian girls are easier than non-Christian girls.
Yeah.
You even hear them say stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course that, I think you have some of the same, all of the stuff that's affecting society is affecting the people that are coming to church.
Oh, yeah.
So that is true.
Sure.
And so if you're trying to evaluate the effectiveness of a church based on the general sense of morality that people had 50 years ago, then yeah, yeah. I mean, we're all being affected by all this garbage that's being pumped out here. So,
oh man, yeah.
But I met my wife in church,
Okay.
and something that I always tell folks is, if you met her in the street, then you can't really be upset when she starts acting like she's from the street.
Right.
All right. So where you meet someone does matter. And you're much more likely to meet someone of quality in church than you are at the club. And that's just that's just like a numbers game. I mean, there are just less there are just less of the kind of woman that you would want to, take your name in the club than would be at church. I mean, you could almost throw a rock and probably hit somebody that would be a person of good moral character, as opposed to trying to take that chance in the club. That's slim pickings there. But to their defense, the folks that believe that this is the case, it is true that the preaching in churches has become so kind of watered down and not willing to sort of take on a lot of those moral sort of issues that people see.
Yeah.
What is your, how do you deal with that? What, how do you manage? I said a lot of stuff, but how do you manage that sort of idea?
Well, there's a couple of ways. Our society doesn't do things anymore because that's what you're supposed to do. Okay. So I think they need an understanding. Okay. And what the church doesn't teach on is one thing is covenant. Okay. Marriage is a covenant. And I teach people the only safe way for intimacy, the only safe context for intimacy is covenant. Okay, is for you to give up the right to reject me. Okay, and so now I'm safe to be seen as I am. Okay, so you have a lot of sex in the world, but you don't have much intimacy. Okay, and the goal of life for men and women, the goal of every life is intimacy. Okay, I want to be known, and I want to know without being rejected. Okay, pornography is false intimacy. the woman is always submissive. She's always alluring. She would never say no to you. You know what I'm saying? She would never reject you. And so for that reason, she's attractive. The girl in the books we used to use, I guess everything's on the internet now. And so she's already undressed. I don't have to talk her into anything. She's available and I won't be rejected. And so we have what you call false intimacy, because love and intimacy is risky. Okay, am I man enough? Am I woman enough? Am I really attractive? Why are people with me? You got all these questions and your insecurities, and so we would rather deal with false intimacy. We would rather deal with having sex and you not really know who I am, or for a man having sex with a woman that he's not married to, and he keeps control over to her by the threat that it's easy to get out of it. You know what I'm saying? And so she can never be herself because she's afraid of losing. And so you're dealing with a lot of fear and insecurity, and the world culture, how can I say this? Culture has discipled the people in the church.
Yep.
Much more than we have, okay? We take our kids, man, drop them off at school for 30, 40 hours a week, and then go to a 2-hour service in a class maybe and think that people are supposed to be transformed, okay? And so you can't immerse yourself in something and be something other than what you immerse yourself in, if that makes sense, successfully. See, so we're like people who deal with fish, but the aquarium is nasty, okay? And we're focusing on trying to make the fish healthy, but we send them out into this nasty aquarium. And so when they come back next Sunday, they're all messed up again. See, and so church hasn't had affecting culture its goal. We just want people, okay? But culture is the ecosystem of society. Okay, it determines who lives and who dies. You want to get rid of certain animals, you don't have to hunt them, just change the ecosystem, and they'll die off. See, and that's what the enemy has done in the church, is that the ecosystem now is so nasty, okay, that the fish are sick. Okay, and so what people are identifying as church women not being any different, it's women being how they think they have to be. Okay, I was talking to this one girl, and she said, "Okay, Pastor, I read your book, and I know that the Bible is against premarital sex." Okay, and I said, "Yep," and she says, "But practically, how are you going to get a man without having sex with him?" Okay, because he has so many options. He can go other places. I said, "Well," I said, "Have you had a boyfriend?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Have you had sex?" She said, reluctantly, "Yeah." I said, "Do you still have him?" She said, "No." I said, "So it's a lie." I said, how many people have had sex and still don't have a man? So the whole lie is that if you have sex, you have to have sex to get a man. But no, you have to have sex to get a man to try you out. Okay, but it doesn't make him stick. And so it's a lie. And I think that's some of what made Kevin so valuable. He said he just brought out statistics and he removed lies. Now, he did it in a really rough way for some people. And so they couldn't hear what he was saying because of how he was saying it. You know what I'm saying? And that was a strategy that worked for him, that made him popular, but it also hid his message from some people who really could have used it. Okay. I've seen women pass up great guys because the image of the guy that they wanted was probably a guy who wasn't interested in them. Okay. I've seen that. And so I've seen people be single for a long time because, well, their standards were up here, their standards were there, where I told them, I said, "Hey man, wisdom loves those who love her." Okay. In Proverbs, it says, and so and Proverb presents wisdom as in the feminine. Okay, it talks about her. Okay, and so a wise woman, the primary value she should be attracted to is the man's attraction to her. Okay, is the man you should want somebody who wants you. You know, somebody who does not want you is totally not worthy of your time. Somebody who's not attracted to you, somebody who won't commit to you is totally not worthy of your time. And you should be secure enough in yourself to realize that, you know, and so somebody who's pursuing you, and God made women, man. I've seen women fall in love with guys, man. You know, women can fall in love with anybody, man. And but I think the way things are shaped now, the way people talk about success and vision, I think people have set the bar so high that they've made getting married impractical. You know, they practically kind of price themselves out of the market, because what they want, you know, I remember telling, when I was single, I remember telling God what I wanted. He said, man, he said, she ain't gonna want to have nothing to do with you. You know, you talking about perfection, you know. And so I think a lot of times, and I wrote a chapter of this in the book, is your attraction. Why are you attracted to who you're attracted to? Okay, are you wanting somebody to make up for the voids in your life, to make you somebody that maybe you feel you're not? Or are you attracted to someone whose presence you feel good in, and you feel good talking to them, and you feel good being with them, and because that's what it's about, man. It's about how you feel in another person's presence, you know, and if they have character, if they are good people, if they have a good track record, then that's what it's about. I want to spend the day with somebody I like, man, not somebody who's rich or poor or has muscles, doesn't have muscles. You know, I mean, there's things that you look at. You want people healthy, you want them positive, you want all those things, but ultimately, man, you want to be happy around them. You know, you want to be around somebody that makes you happy, man, that you can laugh with, and you have a sense of humor and all those things. And so I just think a lot of people are missing the mark. And I think Kevin used to hit on that. And that was his important message, is that if you don't wake up, you're going to wake up out of the market. You're going to wake up and everything has passed you by. And that was, but that message got hid.
Well, he said that by saying die alone, and
yeah.
buy a dog and die alone. And
right,
so, yeah,
right.
that's hard. That's hard to hear.
It's tough to hear, especially when you're facing it.
Yeah.
See, so you don't want to. I want to give you reality without you losing hope, and I think that's going to be a key as far as ministering to women, ministering to men. Is that, you know, I don't want you to give up hope. You know, people have gone through so much rejection, so much heartbreak. You know, rejected by fathers, rejected by boyfriends, and all this kind of stuff, that we have to have a strategy that says, okay, you know, this is what you control. Okay, you control sex. Okay, men control marriage. Okay, don't give men what you control without having what they control.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So the old way to say that was marry as a virgin. You see what I'm saying? But that's not a good message. But I'm saying, okay, what do you want? You know, what do you want? Do you want experiences? Because what I tell women, I say, look, if you just want to experience, you know, a sexual relationship here and there, and you know, go to bed with somebody here and there, that's your right. Do it. Okay, but it's not going to produce marriage. You know, and so if what you want is marriage, then you have to hold out for marriage. And your strength is not in your sameness, it's in your uniqueness. Okay. When I want you, you are the only one who does it for me. Okay. So the title of our chapter in our book about that is, does he want something or someone? Okay. If he wants sex, over half the people on earth can give it to him. Okay. If he wants you, you are the only one. Okay. So, well, Pastor, what if he passes by me and goes to the woman with sex? Well, then it's going to haunt him all his life, what it would have been like with you. Okay. He's going to be thinking about that for the rest of his life. Is this mystery that I didn't pay the price to be with this woman who valued herself. You know, I don't know if you have time. I write skits, and in this one skit, it's about this man is teaching this boy, this young man, how to make choices. Okay, and he says, boy, you know, if you're gonna be a man, you need to know how to choose, how to dress, how to buy a suit, how to buy a car, and how to get a woman, how to choose a woman. So I'm gonna teach you all three, you know. So they go to this suit shop, pull out this little cheap suit, man. The guy puts it on. He says, put your hand up. This thing draws down halfway down his arm because the suit doesn't fit well. It's not a nice suit, okay? Then he gets a moderate suit, you know, and this suit looks nice. It wears on him. He said, now I'm going to show you $2,500 suit. Man, this thing feels like another skin. And so the guy asked him, says, what's the difference? Okay. And he tells him the difference in that, in his case, the middle suit is the best one for you because you don't need to spend $2,500 on a suit, all right? So then they go to the car dealership and they say, they get a little cheap car, man. He says, you know, hit it. It won't go around semis. You know, this thing is, he says, roll up the window. You know, he has to roll up the window by hand and all this stuff. Then they bring out another car, and this car is better, man. It has electronic stuff. Then they bring out this super expensive car. And the whole issue is, what's the difference? Okay. Well, then he said, now I'm going to show you how to pick a woman. So they go to the woman's store. Okay. And this time they start out at the top. They start out, you know, I don't know if you've ever been to Neiman Marcus or something. You go up to the top floor where they offer you champagne, you know, the whole deal. And these women, man, they are like amazing. Okay. And this guy says, man, these women are, you know, he says, well, what does it take to get a woman like this? He said, you got to commit to these women. You got to give them your life, man. You got to, you know, you don't just play with these women. You know, you're going to have to commit yourself to these women. He says, oh, man, that's great. Piece of cake, man, I'll do it. And then he says, but this is not the only floor. Okay. Then he goes down, there's another floor, and the women they're pretty, but they're not set up as nice, you know. And he says, wow, what does it take to get these women? He says, if you date them for a while, you know, they'll give you sex and stuff, and then you can get over them and you can go to the next one, you know. It doesn't take nearly what it takes for that top shelf. He says, oh, he said, well, you know, wow, okay. He said, but there's another floor. And then they go down to this lower floor, and the women are just laying on tables, and they're tossed around like bargain stuff on a bargain table. And he said, what does it take for these women? Nothing, man. Nice car, give them a little attention, buy them a drink, buy them dinner. And matter of fact, you don't even have to keep them all night. There's a box outside where you can throw them when you're done with them, you know? And the guy says, man, what's the difference? You know, because there's a big difference in what it takes. He says, there is no difference. It's just how they see themselves, you know? And I've told that story to women, and they like, you can tell they haven't been the one on the top shelf.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so what you have to do is take the cuteness out of that stuff. You know, because Cardi B doesn't seem like a happy woman to me. You know what I'm saying? But yet she's discipling millions of little girls, man. And so Beyonce has a stripper vibe. And Beyonce is probably one of the most talented people I've ever seen, okay? But then she comes with that other thing, and so it's getting worse and worse. You know what I'm saying? Stuff that people see now, I used to have to sneak into places to get that same vibe. I used to have to sneak into a topless, stripper, where a stripper was, and you snuck in, and there was shame. You didn't want anybody to see you. But now, man, it's mainstream. See, and so the culture is affecting the church, but their people are not happy, man. I said, Halle Berry's husband cheated on her. Okay. Beyonce's husband cheated on her. Janet Jackson couldn't stay with a guy because they all cheated on her. I'm like, so it's obviously not looks that keeps your man at home. See, you understand what I'm saying? See, and so it's the culture, and so we've got to know, in order for a person to think straight, they're going to have values, man. They're going to have to know, okay, why do I not give a man my body when I'm not married to him? And it's because it lessens the chance that you'll ever get married. You develop this history. Now if you don't want to get married and you just want to sleep around, have wonderful so-called one-night stands and experiences, then go for it. But it's based on what you want. And don't get mad after 20 years of that, you're not married. And you maybe have 2 kids, 3 kids.
Yeah, that's a great illustration. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Goodness. I mean, you clearly understand what the problems are. It seems like you've talked to a few folks that may have been embroiled in the middle of that.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the reason I wanted to ask you some of these questions in
Okay,
this
good,
conversation
man.
with you. Now, one thing I this whole idea about dating versus courting.
Right.
And a popular YouTuber named CGA, Coach Greg Adams.
Okay.
One thing that he frequently talks about is how all dating does basically is ensure that you'll have a high body count.
Okay, give me a definition difference, dating and courting.
Okay, so dating is all about, stuff like chemistry, attraction. It's based on, if you click or not. It is you meet, congregate in public. It's about going to dinner. It's about all of the sort of formality associated with taking somebody on a date.
Right.
It's all of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And something that CGA actually brings up is that there's an undeniable link between what we call dating and prostitution, because what people are doing now in association with dating, related to dating, is the same things that prostitutes were doing, or that it was the same thing. So you meet in public, right? You get some dinner, and then there's a hotel right here, and in other words, you're doing stuff outside of family, outside of organizations like churches that are sort of overseeing the process. You're not really you're not submitted to any organization that can tell you, no, this is not a good idea.
Wow.
The guy hasn't even said anything to your father.
Wow.
He doesn't, family members don't even know that you're hanging out with their daughter.
Yep.
All of that kind of stuff, cloak of anonymity stuff. That's what dating is now, right?
Okay.
And all of that stuff, what that does is just facilitates high body counts.
Right.
Right. Whereas courting does is it limits body count because you're not engaging in that behavior until you get married. And it also limits that because you are allowing people that know you, that know the other person, to tell you yay or nay if this is a good idea.
Right. Good.
You're not going and hanging out by by yourself. You're not. It's not Netflix and chill. That's not what. That's not the way that goes. Right. So there's a formality about it. I did an episode on my program called Thunder's Thoughts, which is a 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time program on Thursdays. Got one coming up tomorrow night.
Right.
And I did one called "Here's Why Arranged Marriage Would Never Work in the Black Community."
Okay.
And out of that episode, I mean, I reviewed, took a in-depth look at the show Married at First Sight.
Yeah.
And Netflix recently released season 10, and I watched that whole thing. But the show is actually a Lifetime show, and actually they're in season 14. But so they released this season 10. I watched the whole thing. There are two black couples.
Okay.
And it's almost stereotypical what happens. What goes down, the sort of volatile nature of our interactions, especially when single mother raised men. Yeah. So in both cases, the guys were raised by their mother, didn't really have a relationship with their dad.
Okay.
Ever. In one case, the woman, she didn't have a relationship with her dad. The other girl, I think, did, but I don't think it was a good relationship with her father. I don't think their parents are still together. There were 5 couples. Only one of the couples stayed married. Wow. And that one couple, they're on both sides, both their parents are still married. And very predictably, that had a massive impact on if a person was going to be able to stay married to someone that they just met at the altar. Even though they had been hand-selected by experts to put people together that would have similar interests, that would be compatible, and would likely be attracted to each other. But what actually ended up mattering the most was the family structure. Wow. On both sides. Okay. So I thought that was very interesting. So I took a look at that, and I came up with this list of 22 reasons why arranged marriage wouldn't work in our community. Okay. And a lot of them have to do with the massive dysfunction in our community. And goodness. And yeah. So anyhow, that's a bit of a side issue, but the point is, yeah. Well, the point is that I believe that there are 2 things that would solve most of the issues in the black community, almost overnight. Right. Now, these are going to seem overly simplified, and I'm probably not saying something that you hadn't thought of. But the first one is abstinence. And the second one is arranged marriage. Wow. Because obviously we can't pick well. Okay, I'm in my second marriage. We obviously don't pick well. Right. We obviously don't pick very well. Yeah. So having some sort of coordinated effort between churches, maybe community leaders, families, that would submit, we're not talking about child brides. That's not what we're talking about. Yeah. We're talking about people that submit themselves to this process. They had enough of what's out there. Right. They know that ain't it. Right. So they decide, okay, let me try this. Yeah. Now the reason it wouldn't work is that I think was painfully illustrated in Married at First Sight. were the two black couples. All of this sort of dysfunction in their family structures, it just made it impossible, totally impossible for them to be able to stay together. They just it was just impossible. One of them had an issue with not telling the truth, but that was exacerbated by the other one trying to control everything. The woman,
Right.
And then one couple, the dude was totally volatile and just like, it's a reality show, and he was getting mad at the cameraman and stuff, get out of my face and stuff like this. Dude, you signed up for this. You know what this was.
Right.
So one of the guys is like that. The girl, and she's all on social media and stuff. And so she's taking pictures of her food every, time they eat someplace, taking a picture of this and that. And she had a pretty big following, on social media. And that became a problem. Right?
Okay.
So it's all the stuff that you think would be an issue was the issue. And the stuff that traditionally we know actually creates more stable family structures, i.e. the extended families having a lot of, good, examples for them to refer to.
Yeah.
But none of that existed in those
Right.
cases. And the only marriage that was able to last was the one where the family structure was was intact on both sides.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Wow. That's interesting. I watched that show. That's a fascinating show. Sometimes I just, you watch stuff and you're like, okay, where did they get this idea from, man? Who created this thing? And I think a little different about that. I believe the reason arranged marriages work is because of commitment. In that culture,
right.
In that culture, they're committed. Now, and tell me this, because I really don't know this. In arranged marriages, is the wedding the first time they see each other?
No, it doesn't. It's not usually that. Usually what it is that they have known each other, the families know each other, and they kind of see how they interact because, and there's like, this would be, there are the situations where arranged marriages would be stuff like, the Prince of France is going to marry the princess of, so, and they may not have seen each other because that's about creating an alliance.
Right. Yeah. That's about something else. Yeah. I think, I think the problem, which is why I would never do Married at First Sight, is that taste, attraction, preference is so subtle. Okay. In other words, what turns me on about somebody, what turns me off about somebody is really a subtle thing. Okay. And if I'm repelled by somebody, you know what I'm saying? If they have something that's really unattractive to me, that's going to be tough. That's going to be a tough match, man. It's going to be tough to do that. And so, for me, it's you meet somebody that you're attracted to, okay? And a date for me is an interview, okay? It's like I'm looking for reasons not to marry you in the interview, right? I want my marriage to last, okay? So I'm looking for character stuff, but I'm also attracted to you. So to me, marriage is a merger between the heart and the mind, okay? I'm attracted, but yet I'm sober about our chances, okay? And I do realize that love will blind you to things. And so that's where I introduce you to my family, okay? Once I introduce you to my family, I'm considering a life with you, okay? I believe you're considering a life with me. And so, so you meet the family because you want your family's opinion. Okay, what do you guys think? Well, the guy seems slick to me. Well, I don't want to marry nobody slick. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to marry somebody who's a deceiver or something like that. And so we have this thing we call game, okay? Well, I want a man with game. So you want a man who has the ability to trick you, a man who can appear something that he's not. He has lines. He has ways of wooing you. And so you want to be tricked. And when you wind up tricked, it's all, you act like a victim. See, and so a lot of this stuff is in the attraction phase. Okay. Well, I'm attracted to bad boys. You understand what I'm saying? Why? Well, I just feel like he would protect me. No, you're gonna need protection from him. You got to call police on him. You're gonna need a personal protection order with a bad boy. Okay. And so I think a lot of the attraction stuff is perverted. I think you want a warrior. Jesus is a warrior. The Lord is a man of war, but he's also a man of covenant. Okay. He's your best friend. He's your worst enemy. David is another example, man. David was not a neat, polished guy, man. David was, he wanted to kill a guy over lunch. You know what I'm saying? And Abigail said, man, come on, man, you call to be king. This is below you. And I think that's an example of a role that women need to play. See, I protect my wife from danger. My wife protects me from BS. You understand what I'm saying? So we're walking into the movie show and some guy says, man, you are just fine. This could be, I would do this to you and I would do that to you. I let my wife handle that. See, because if I handle it, somebody might be dead. Somebody might be going to jail. So because it's BS, but it's provocative, it's meant to distract you. So my wife says, do you see who I'm with? Why would I be with you? Look at who I'm working with. You know what I'm saying? And tear down his little fragile ego, and then we move on. Now, if he's going to grab her or something like that, then, I got to protect her from danger.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But my wife and I were in Brooklyn and she was driving. Whenever we go to New York, she drives, man. If I drive, it takes us forever to get someplace because I'm nice. I'm a nice driver. I let people in and all this kind of stuff, And she drives like a New Yorker, she's aggressive and and so this guy pulls up and she's on the driver's side. He's on his passenger side, you should get in the car with me, well, I'm looking for something to throw at this dude, man. I'm looking at this, man, don't you see me sitting here, and she handled it, well, that could have been the end of our day. That could have been the end of my life. Because if your guy's saying something like that, he's probably strapped up. He's probably ready for whatever's going to come. See, and so, and so to me, there's an attraction piece, there's a maturity piece, there's a wisdom piece. What I see when I look at Married at First Sight is a lot of immaturity, man. That's a lot of, just a lot of immaturity, man. And if there's an initial attraction there, I can't see why people wouldn't make it. If you're attracted and you're mature and, you blend, the rhythm is right. I just don't think marriage is hard. I've been married twice and I don't think marriage is hard if you want to be married, man. I think control, manipulation, all that stuff comes in, and I think it's because romance, when you fall in love, you feel whole, but you're not. Okay, and so falling in love is the quickest way to feeling good, and I think because you feel good, you think you have to control that other person to keep that feeling. Okay, so friends stay friends a lot longer. And romantic people stay in love. Why? Because of the control and the manipulation and the games you play because it means so much to you, whereas friends will be together through all their marriages, as it were, So I think an understanding of covenant, of keeping covenant, an understanding of spiritual things, that the devil fights marriages, man. That if you believe in a devil, then you need to know, man, because every marriage is a church. Okay, every marriage, if two shall agree concerning anything they shall ask, it shall come to pass. Every marriage is a weapon, man, for God against what the enemy would try to do. And so you're going to be fought with disunity and trying to judging each other and all that kind of stuff. And so that's, to me, what makes marriage hard is the immaturity, the childishness, man. And I think there's a lot of people that grapple with mental illness right now. And I think there's a lot of therapy / deliverance needed, for people, man. To just go on.
Yeah. You know that the therapy thing you just said, something that was one of Kevin's favorite, things to suggest.
Yeah, I used to hear that.
Need therapy.
Yeah, I used to hear that. See, what people do, and a lot of guys don't even realize it, is that if you don't have, if you're not a licensed therapist, you're not allowed to call what you do counseling. Right. Okay, so a lot of pastors, they do what they call counseling. Okay, and it's stuff that we're really not equipped to do. Okay, when I bring you into my office, Shawn, I'm a father. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know how to evaluate the things that you're saying and get you to a healthy place. I'm gonna confront you with the dumb stuff you're doing. You know what I'm saying? And you might be able to handle it. You might not. You might survive it. You might not. But I don't have the ability to recognize trauma or to recognize the different things you may be facing. And so, in the same way, I wouldn't try to set your broken arm. I'm not going to try to walk you through the mental stuff because I'm not trained to do it. See, and so more and more now, pastors are partnering with people who can actually do counseling. We actually have a licensed counselor on our staff. Okay. And so she's a pastor and she can talk to you spiritually, but she can also recognize, okay, we need to move this into a therapy, the world of therapy, as opposed to me just being a minister to you. So I think that's a big deal, and I would applaud him, Kevin, on that, because he talked about that a lot. I think he was a guy. He seemed like he was against you trying to be everything to people, especially as pastors, and if you need help, man, get you some help. If you need, I have people call me for legal problems. And I'm like, man, you need a lawyer. I have them call me, and I can help marriages because I can hold people accountable to the childishness and the bad decisions that they're making. But if you have some mental things that are troubling your marriage, you need to get marriage counseling. I wouldn't get it from a non-Christian because hopefully a Christian is going to understand covenant, and they're not going to give you an easy out of your marriage, but yeah, man.
So
hope we're making sense.
Yeah. No, though I think this is great. I think folks are going to eat this up. This is great. So you've said covenant a few times when describing marriage.
Yep.
And of course I totally agree with that. And I think that's the only reason why a marriage would last. Because the legal system is such that, with no-fault divorce, that it actually incentivizes women to wreck their homes.
Wow.
So, in our community, what is it? 80% of the divorces are initiated. They're filed by our women.
Wow.
And I mean, if you think about it, the state is standing behind the woman. 85% of the time, the kids are going to be given to the woman.
Yep.
That's full custody, not 50-50. That's she has custody. She dictates the terms.
Wow.
You have child support, alimony, all of these things, and many of these mechanisms, child support in particular, was not created actually for what it's being used for now.
Okay.
It was actually created so that in times of war, say for instance, Johnny, he's married to Susie and they have 2 kids, and he gets drafted and he decides he's just going to stay overseas because he met somebody.
Okay.
Okay. So that's what child support was supposed to be for. Right?
Okay.
What is being used for now, it's a, $51 billion industry. What it's being used for now is, there's a lot of fraud that's going on.
Really? Okay.
A lot of this money, the kids are not actually benefiting from. In many cases, women are actually taking advantage of the funds, doing other stuff, going to the DR and getting BBLs and stuff. You know what a BBL is?
A BBL? No.
I don't know if I'm corrupting you, Pastor. I'm sorry. No. It's a Brazilian butt lift.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Okay. Yeah. So elective surgeries, cosmetic surgeries, getting boob jobs and stuff like that. There's a lot of that kind of stuff that's going on. So you can sort of understand why someone that is in the know about how vulnerable the legal aspect of marriage can make men.
Yeah.
You kind of understand why maybe men are not so eager to get married these days as they maybe once were.
Yeah.
And I've even seen situations where folks, they get married, covenant marriage, but no legal component. And that's like actually on the rise now, because in many ways that sort of levels the playing field, because then there's not the sort of incentive to, based on not being happy or whatever sort of trivial kind of reasons, to not break the marriage up.
Yeah, so common law is what you're kind of talking about.
Well, it's not really common law, because depending on what state you're in, common law is the same difference. They still gonna get they still go get what they're going to get. Right. And even with the prenups, that's on the rise now too. Now with the prenups, what's interesting is there have been a number of notable court cases where the prenup didn't do nothing.
Really?
Yeah, and so that's people are scared of that too. So it's like, man, I was going to get legally married, but I heard that this celebrity, they had a prenup, and look, they still got half of their bread.
Yeah, wow.
So maybe that ain't the thing.
Yeah.
So what? So now I'm saying this not to say that men don't get married because it's too much of a risk. I'm not saying that at all. I'm a proponent of marriage. Kevin was a proponent of marriage, and Kevin was married 2 times.
Okay.
Divorced 2 times.
Right.
And joked that he was looking for his next ex-wife.
Right.
Because he believed in marriage, and he was encouraging people to get married.
Okay.
Which is unusual for people that are in that segment of YouTube.
Yeah.
That community. That's not the case.
Right.
For instance, this interview here, this was with Rollo Tomassi. And Rollo Tomassi, who is a very influential figure, he's an author. He wrote a series of books called The Rational Male.
Okay.
He breaks down sort of aspects related to dating dynamics. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
But he's been married for 25 years.
Right.
And he's not a proponent of marriage. So he tells folks that the way that we do marriage now, he said that he thinks it's a bad idea for men. Wow. He says the way that we used to do it, including the way that he did it, obviously, he thinks that that's good, but there's too many incentives. There's too much stuff that's in the way now.
Yeah.
And as you see that divorce rates are climbing, and
Right.
all of this stuff is sort of falling down around us.
Mm-hmm.
What is your response to the sort of legal hang-ups that maybe men may be having associated with marriage?
Well, I think there are some, disadvantages. I got a divorce during the OJ trial. So I felt really vulnerable, man, because, a Black guy being in the court system during that time, I just didn't feel safe, And part of the reason I stayed in a bad marriage so long, I didn't want to lose my kids. And I knew that going to court as a man, that I stood a chance of losing my kids. And so I stayed in a really tough relationship until my kids were old enough to say where they wanted to be. So when I got divorced, my son was 13, my twin daughters were 9. And so at that age, they can kind of say where they want to be. And it has a lot of weight in court. And I knew who they would choose, And so I waited. I endured some tough stuff during that time. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I would say to that. Men, we should be committed. We should lead this thing, and I don't think that I should not do it because of the legal exposure that is there. There's reasons why things evolved the way they did. Okay, and so I think I still have to have the goal of commitment, of covenant, and I'm not sure what differences he's making between the way he got married, but I think it's risky.
Well, he's legally married. He's legally married, but his point was that just with the impact of, say, social media, just modern, there's a bunch of stuff that happened in the last 25 years that have totally wrecked the dating market. It made it very difficult to be able to tell the difference between somebody that is honest and is telling you the truth about themselves, their past, X, Y, and Z, and somebody just that knows the stuff to say. And then you wake up the day after you're married and, oh my goodness, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think patience is the weapon that forces deception to reveal itself. Okay, and so I think that people just need to be more patient and watch things, because eventually people are gonna show you who they are, and there's no guarantee people won't change. Somebody might wake up in the morning and say, "No, I just don't want you no more," But I think that's part of the risk of love. When you think about God, Shawn, God didn't childproof the garden. Okay, we have a risky God, man. We have a God that gave us authority over the earth, man, and we're messing it up. We're not doing a real good job with it. He made us for connection. He made us vulnerable to one another, man. And so a guy can walk in a market, man, and kill 10 people. People can change other people. People can break your heart because we're in this world where we were meant to be connected. And it's so important that we be connected that it's risky. It's very risky. And I think that you can't get the risk out of it and still have what he meant for us to have. I think in order to, I think men need to be married, man. I think marriage really works for men, unless you can get a woman to live with you or whatever, and you not be, you know what I'm saying? If women held their standards up, okay, and held out, I think there would be a lot less. If there was some accountability, I think if people had pastors who can sit down and tell a woman, "Huh, sugar, you talk way too much and you demean your husband." I'm walking to, if you ever let me minister to you and I tell one to leave and the other one to stay, it's not going to be good. Because there's certain things I won't say to men in front of their wives. There's certain things I won't say to women in front of their husbands. I say, man, ever since you've been in here, you haven't let him finish a sentence. You got this rat-a-tat mouth, everything, you got this attitude, you're not thankful, it looks like you're terminal unhappy. And what do you expect him to do with that? Okay, I'm sitting here and I don't want to live with you. You know what I'm saying? So that's that's father-daughter talk. You see what I'm saying? That's not counseling.
Right.
I used to remember telling my daughters growing up, I said, that little attitude you guys have won't work in marriage. You will be alone if you go into your marriage with that attitude. See? And so I think there's a place for fathers. I think there's a place for, for people who are fathers who are not fathers. In other words, to be able to father you, to be able to, and the word Jezebel means unfathered. Okay, so we've got this society, man, of unfathered women. What they want and what they think they want is totally incongruent. You see what I'm saying? I want to play around for 10 years, then I want to get married. Okay, when reputation means so much to a man. Okay. In other words, man, you love your mate before you meet your mate by keeping yourself. If you fought off having sex before you met me, then there's a better chance you're going to fight off having an affair on me. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. There's a and this is something that I've said frequently. Mm-hmm. There's a reason that it's a bad idea to wife up a 304. So 304 is a nice way to say a loose woman.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Wow.
Okay. So if you think of the number 304, and if you flip it upside down, then it spells something.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
The 3 is an E, for instance.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. All right. So, see, the thing is that, and men and women are different. Okay. Yeah. And I know we're not supposed to say that anymore, but
totally different. Yeah.
Totally different. But men and women are different. Women tend to get bored more than guys do. Guys can just do the same thing over and over and over and not really have a big issue with it. Right. Women want variety. They want to do something different. They get tired of the house looking the same. They want to color this, while this other color, Right. Okay. So we know what a 304 does when they get bored.
Okay.
So, and since past behavior is the best indication of future behavior.
Right.
This is why that's a risky commitment. This is why would not be a good choice.
Why would you do that?
Well, I don't know. Well, I think the reason that you would do it is because you are not the master of yourself. You haven't mastered yourself.
Okay.
So, in other words, you let primal urges dictate decisions that you're going to make.
Right.
And now I will say that, especially now, but this has always been the case. Disproportionately, men do not have access to. They don't have access to women. Disproportionately, men do not have access to women. In the history of the world, only about 40% of men have procreated, where close to 95% of women have procreated. And
Wow, I didn't know that.
yeah, and that's in the history of the world. Now, what's happened is social media, dating apps, and X, Y, and Z have made that even more drastic. And
Really?
there's this principle that's talked about frequently, the Pareto principle, this 80-20 rule,
Right.
and we see that actually works that way also in dating. Whereas where the bottom 80%, I'm sorry, how does this work? Right. So where it's 80% of women are targeting that top 20% of guys. That's the ones that they idealize.
Right.
And you were suggesting this earlier when you were talking about people shooting for people that are out of their, out of their league, as it were.
Right.
And shooting for people that don't want them.
Yeah.
And this idea of like a right match and why that is important, right? And even the ability, which is different. Men don't usually have this capability, but women have the capability of being able to fall in love with someone that they find physically unattractive.
Okay.
Right. I mean, it's almost like a dime a dozen. We see this all the time. There's all kinds of women that are way more attractive than the guys. As a matter of fact, a guy's not supposed to be attractive. He's supposed to be productive, right? He has a role. Pretty is not supposed to be his role.
Yeah.
But we've gotten that switched around too, where now that has become an elevated, it's been elevated in the sort of list of, things that women typically describe that they want in their mate. But anyhow, I don't remember where I was going now. But anyhow, it seemed appropriate at the time.
No, but well, let's man, that's crazy. 40% of the men haven't, or have only 40% of the men have procreated.
Only 40% in the history of the world. And the way that we know this is if you look at the DNA. The DNA shows you there's a way to tell how many females you're related to and how many males.
Yeah. Wow.
40%.
So if we use the Pareto principle, what you're saying is that 20% of the men are having 80% of the babies.
This is where it's going.
Okay.
This is where it's going. And in our community, what's happening is it's about 16 to 18% of these sort of pookies are the baby daddies. They are producing about 80% of the out of wedlock births.
Okay. And do you think that's because of an attraction problem? Or
I do think it's because of an attraction problem. I think it's it's actually so say for instance if I say I've been married 3 times and I describe my spouse, my ex wife, I describe her all of them the same way. Oh, they wouldn't know good with X, Y, and Z.
Right.
At some point you have to start saying there is a common denominator there, and it's me.
Yeah.
I'm the one that is drawing these same kinds of folks to me.
Yep. Yep.
Right. And it's because I'm hyper evaluating characteristics that don't, they're not going to lead to a successful long-term relationship. Right. And I'd say the same thing is the case, with our women, where they're not even requiring marriage before having sex. Right. And I will tell you, in my own situation, my own experience, it was hard for me to find one that was willing to wait. I'm married to her, by the way.
Yeah, right.
We waited until we got married. Right. But it was hard to find someone that was willing to wait. Because after a while, they start saying, well, I want to know what I got. I need to test it out. I want to make sure that, I don't want to be married to somebody that, I don't have good, sexual chemistry with. Yeah. It turns into that kind of thing. And it's like, wait a minute here. Those are the man's talking points. That's what men used to say. Why are women
But,
saying that now?
well, see, the role,
This is ridiculous.
yeah. See, part of the deception, and like I said, I don't believe women should think like men. Okay, I believe women should know how men think, and be aware of that. But there has been a feminization of men and a masculinization of women. Okay, yeah. And so the key to success for a woman, even in the corporate world, is not being like a man. Okay, women are wired differently than men. I'll probably get a lot of pushback on this, but women are wired different, and to me, they get things done a different way. Okay, it's not that they don't get things done; they get things done a different way. Okay, and to me, a feminine woman is a lot more powerful than a masculine woman. Okay, but we have somehow, either consciously or subconsciously, equated masculine with power, feminine with weakness. Okay, and obviously there's some differences in physical strength. Okay, but it's hard for me to take a shower with my wife, man, because she can stand the water a lot more hot than I can. Women can take more pleasure and more pain than a man. Okay, if we got the pleasure out of sex that they do, we go nuts. We lose our mind. Okay, women just have this high capacity, and so I think femininity has been devalued, and so women are trying to act like men, and in order to do so, you've got to harden your heart. A woman has to harden her heart. Okay, for women, if in the pure sense, sex is connected to love. Okay, for a woman to jump around from bed to bed, her heart has to really harden, because that's not the way she's cut. Okay, and so with women, because women control sex, if they were to decide, hey, look, man, you can't have me without being committed to me. You can't, and I'm talking about marriage. You can't talk about marriages and have me. We need to be married, is what will change things. Because when it comes to me leaving you, I will remember the cost. I'll remember what it cost me to have you. You understand what I'm saying? And so if it doesn't cost much, then I don't value it much. See, and so the whole reason for a wilderness experience is to change your taste. And so a lot of women, rather than go without a man, they'll just keep that same messed up taste in men and keep having the same experience. See, and I tell them, I said, man, you guys raised the sons for the most part. Why? If men are messed up, man, we got to look at who raised them. and did you raise, what is the story? Women raised their daughters and they loved their sons. Okay. And so we everybody in this thing needs to be accountable. We need to realize that we have a fatherless nation. Okay. And it says in Malachi, I'm gonna turn the house of the fathers and the house of the fathers to the children. Let's smite the earth with a curse. We're living under a curse, man. We're killing unborn and asking God to protect us in them all.
Uh-oh.
You understand what I'm saying? We won't protect the unborn, and so I think there's a lost value in the value of children. I think we need to realize that they're people, and that we have to put them. Matter of fact, there's a great book called "Them Before Us" that you might want to read, that talks about children's rights. Who children are and what they have a right to. A child has a right to his father. Okay, we talk about father's rights, but children have a right to their father. And when they don't have access to their father, it has an effect on them. It has a big effect on them. And if a woman puts the children first, she won't get into this thing. You won't have this thing about child support and all that, because everybody will put the kids first. Okay, it should be them before us. And that's what that book talks about. It's a bad book, man. There's a book called The Boy Crisis, where this liberal guy, you heard of that book? Where this liberal guy, he went into research thinking he would find certain things, and he found totally the opposite, man, that boys need fathers, man, that boys need this and boys need that. And there's been a war. There's another book, A War on Little Boys, the war against boys, you know. And so we really need to get back in the Word, man, and get our values straight. See, we keep mentioning this word covenant. What does covenant do? When I enter into covenant, like say, for instance, you and I are friends, okay? But to me, you and I are covenant friends. Okay, we don't hang out, we don't talk every 2 or 3 days, but I would never, ever do anything to harm you, okay? I would never use you. I would never use you with a selfish interest in mind. You see what I'm saying? I would only want to bless you. Well, that's what covenant is. That's what covenant is about, is I'm going to be a blessing to you all the days of your life. See, and so, and our friendship now has moved. When I first heard you play the horn, I just went nuts, okay? I'm like, man, you came to my church, you played Amazing Grace. And I'm like, man, I want that guy playing with us. Well, that's about benefiting me. Okay, but when you move it into covenant, it's about my character. So our friendship has moved from your music ability to my character. Does that make sense? When I get married, it moves from attraction and what you can do for me to the character that I have. Okay, in other words, my character is how I'm going to relate to you. My character is going to be what holds us together. See what I'm saying? So when you look at the shallow way people live life, man, and the character issues we have, it's no wonder we can't keep a marriage together. You know, because it's like my people's favorite saying is, I ain't signed up for this. Why? Because a marriage is going to have unexpected challenges. You know, I might be pushing you in a wheelchair next year. You know what I'm saying? You know, you don't know what you're going to face. But covenant is so deep, you don't care, except for betrayal. You know what I'm saying? Except that you show me you're somebody totally different than what I thought I had. It's us forever, man. It's you and I. And so that allows you to build. Covenant allows you to build, okay? Because I don't have to worry about you. I'm safe. I'm secure. The only reason for covenant is faith. And people don't realize that. I say, why would anybody get married? Why would you, all these people on earth, why would you commit to one person, man? People live to be 90. You get married, you get married at 20, man, that's 70 years, man. Why would you do that? And the whole thing is for assurance, for confidence, for faith that I'll never have to worry about you harming. See what I'm saying? And so we have people that they're double-minded, man. They're double, they have a bad hearts, man. We don't allow God to deal with our hearts and mature us. 1 Corinthians 13 attaches love to maturity. Okay, so a mature person is a loving person. Okay, love is easily satisfied. Lust is never satisfied. Okay, lust, you can have tall and beautiful. I want short and stacked. You can have pretty dark skin, but I want light skin. Or I want this, I want that. Because lust is never satisfied. And so when you talk about the boredom stuff, that's at the root. The root of the word of a whore is unsatisfied. Okay? And it simply means that you're not walking in love. And you're not walking in what God calls us to walk in, because love is easily satisfied. Love doesn't complain. It's not, well, if you did this, well, if you did that, it's not built on that. So maybe that helps. I don't know.
Yeah, no, this has been terrific, and we'll have to do this again.
Sure,
and,
man.
I intend on convening another panel discussion.
Okay.
Pretty soon, probably on Bernard's channel again. I've been talking to him about doing another one.
Mm-hmm.
Probably related to this Roe v. Wade stuff and
Okay.
some
Yeah.
other things that are happening.
Right.
But yeah, and maybe sometime I've got this. I've got another. I've got a panel show with Ike Ogiamian called Case Closed. And
Okay.
that show is 4 p.m. on Sundays.
Oh man, I'd love to do it.
Yeah. So we'll have to have you be a guest sometime.
Yeah.
That show's really growing, and we cover trending topics. And
Okay, good.
the panel is very. It's quite diverse. So
Mhm.
a lot of different kind of folks on the panel, and
Right.
it's always a good time. All right, man. Well, thank you so much again for doing this. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. I learn stuff when we talk about what people are saying and where people are, and I'm interested in that. I'm interested in being on the Manosphere, man. I want to. That's my group. I want to reach them. I want to reach them because I just think that we're growing so apart. Men and women are and it's not gonna. It doesn't bode well for our people, man. So,
No,
thank you.
and
Thank you.
absolutely.
Tell O'Shea, Duke, tell him I said hello, man.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, he wanted to do some things at one time, and I don't know I know he was in med school, so I don't know if stuff kind of faded away or what. But
yeah, he's I know he's busy. He's started
man, yeah.
another channel or something, and
Yeah.
and so he's kind of been all steam. What am I saying? Is that the expression?
Ahead.
All steam, full steam ahead. That's what it is.
Yeah.
He's been full steam ahead, working on that stuff. But
okay. Good.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll see. I'll be talking to you.
For sure, man. For sure, man. God bless you.
Yeah. God bless you too.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Bye-bye.